What's up, everyone? This is the Inspired Show where we cultivate growth and inspire. So, my name's Joe Cohen.
George Perez. Sometimes I'm going to be Jorge.
Yeah.
But today I'm George.
Today you're George?
Yeah.
It's kind of a gloomy day, so we're going to go.
Just Joe's just better. That's what I think.
The J's.
Yeah.
Right on. Well, George, I just wanted to thank you for being my business partner and joining this collective here, because I think we have a lot of information to share and help people grow. My goal is really just to help people really understand that it's not as difficult as we make it out to ourselves to be.
What, like the whole life thing, or
just everything in general, right? I mean, business.
Everything.
I mean, we're business partners. We're in business. We
talk about business. We do business things.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a thing.
It's a thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's not that hard.
Yeah. And so, I was actually on the way here, and you know who Ed Milet is, right?
Yeah, the motivational guy.
Motivational guy. And he says the road less traveled is basically the path that has the least amount of light, and it's also the most gain that you'll actually find. So if you're feeling alone out there in business, and if you're feeling that you're not in the right space, you actually truly are. And we're here to help you grow through that. So that's kind of my goal for this.
Yeah. No, I think the core of this show is going to be just obviously inspire people and give them a roadmap into what our experience has been and what's worked and what hasn't worked, which a lot of things haven't worked, which that could be great education, and have an authentic, fun conversation about life somewhere in there as well.
Yeah, in the short amount of time we've been business partners, we've encountered so many different ups and downs, right? And so I think that that's something crucial to share. So I'd like to just kind of let everybody know who we are and, tell us where you're from, George.
I am from Caracas, Venezuela. I actually lived there until I was 12 years old. My parents met in Miami while they were in college, and they wanted to stay in Miami, but I guess the Vietnam War was going on, and my grandmother didn't want to make my dad a resident, so he didn't have an immigration status to stay when they finished college, so they moved to Venezuela, and they had me. And my sister was a classical pianist. So my whole life, we would go to Miami every 3 months, and I always loved the United States. I remember watching TV, and, we take so much for granted of how amazing things are here, versus living in a third world country. And finally, when I turned 12, my parents gave me the option to move to the U.S. with my grandparents to get a head start until they would move to the U.S., which was supposed to be a year after. Then a year after turned into 2 years and 3 years, 4 years, and they never came. But that was cool. My grandparents raised me, and I was the only 12-year-old without curfew, which
wow. That could get you in some.
Yeah. Well, and it was interesting because when you're young, freedom is wealth, right? So I felt like I was the richest kid in the world. Yeah. And I think it's kind of colored my whole life. I think that I love my freedom, and I think that that's why eventually I became an entrepreneur, because I love my freedom. I think freedom is being free is being rich. What else do you want to know?
That's beautiful.
Because I could just keep going.
Being free is being rich. Actually, you know what? I never even knew that about you, other than the video I watched when you made that documentary about your mom.
Yeah.
And we actually have a very similar childhood.
Yeah.
Different, but similar, because when I grew up in Lakewood, California, which is here in the United States. But my mom was a single mom. I knew my dad. My dad wanted to be a part of my life, but he was always, living somewhere else. They were never married. I always joke around and say that I was one of those date nights that kind of was like an oopsie daisy. So
but they were never married?
They weren't married until I was.
You were a love child?
I was a love child. Yeah.
You little bastard.
Yeah. And so they
literally
they didn't get married until I was actually 14 years old.
Okay, so then they kind of came back.
They came back together a little bit, and funny story is that they were married for a year, and I begged them to get a divorce.
That's smart son.
Yeah.
You were like, why?
My life was so much calmer when they weren't together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because
did they take you up on that, or
they did? Yeah, they were only married for a year, and they got a divorce.
Good.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I've never heard of a child actually breaking their parents apart for his own convenience. I like that.
It was one of those things where I grew up with a single mom who worked 3 different jobs. And so from the time that I was like 8 years old and I can reach the stove, I was cooking my own mac and cheese. I was kind of taking care of myself, fending for myself. And when my dad came back into the picture, although it was great, good for them, right? There was a little bit more of a friction there because he was trying to kind of
assert his parental role.
Exactly. And I was already independent. I already had my freedom. I mean, you gave me a bike, I was on the road. I was out there doing whatever I could to, enjoy my life.
Yeah, it's interesting how when you're that young and no one's policing over you, you become more responsible. And,
right.
And but I also think that depends on the kid. I think when you give a kid so much freedom, they could go south.
One of each way, right?
Or they could rise to their own responsibility. I remember finishing in high school. I was the only one of my friends that would like do the math problems because I knew if I didn't do them after class, I wouldn't remember.
Right.
And they would be shocked. They're like, "But nobody's gonna check after you. Why?" And I'm like, "Because no one was checking after me. That I had to look after myself."
So the key point was that if you didn't do it then, it wouldn't get done.
Yeah.
So
and nobody was gonna check if I did it.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's actually a very similar scenario to how I live my life today. Is whenever I'm doing something in business or whenever I'm doing something with my friends, it's like we got to book it in the calendar right now. Otherwise, if I don't do it today, it's never going to get done. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's a natural form of time blocking. Right.
I think so. You're better at time blocking than me, but something like that. So yeah, and I went to school in Florida State. I lived in New York for a few years, which I recommend. I think living in New York is one of the greatest schools of life because it just teaches you so much about also independence. And I always say there's 2 great windows to live in New York. It's either when you're young and broke or you're rich. If you're not in any of those 2 windows, like when people in their early 30s or whatever tell me, I think I want to move to New York, I'm like, no, next life.
Yeah.
It's over. But it was a great experience. And then after that, I moved to LA. I've been in LA now for 19 years. In a weird way, LA reminds me of Caracas with the mountains, and the climate is very similar, even though it's been like Seattle lately. That's the similar weather we have. But I find it to be home. I remember before I moved to LA, everybody was telling me how everybody here was so fake and superficial and all that. And I remember I made a conscious choice that was not going to be my experience. And I think making a conscious choice about choosing what we're going to experience makes so much difference.
Yeah, it's a bigger impact
into what happens, right?
Yeah. I think that's true because, even when I was growing up, I grew up, in a rough neighborhood. It wasn't like the best part of Lakewood, because we could only afford a certain amount, right? We had a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, little 700 square foot house, which we actually converted the garage ourselves to get extra bedrooms. But
your shady stuff.
That's where it all began. Yeah. But I remember when I was young, it was like there was a person who broke out of prison and held their family hostage right across the street from my house. Or like I was riding my bike down the street and I had one of the nicer bikes. It was a BMX bike because my dad, he bought it for me, and I was getting chased down by people trying to steal my bike from me. You know what I mean? So from a very early age, I had to, really kind of fight or flight, right? It was that fight or flight mode for most of my life, And then my mom, she would bring boyfriends through, and they would have an opinion about who I was as a son and things of that nature. So I always felt like
after you broke them up, she had boyfriends.
Oh, prior to them breaking up, there was many boyfriends. But, it was one of those things where, I think my mom did her best to raise us with what she had, but she also wanted that companionship and that dual income to help offset some of that. And so I was kind of one of those kids where I would follow the rules, but I wouldn't necessarily let that other individual tell me what those rules were. And there was a little bit of friction there as well. So a lot of the times I would end up getting into, arguments or fights with those people. And, it was kind of like, it toughened me, you know what I mean? It made me have really thick skin. And then I grew out of that as I started to develop and grow older. But one of the things about my experience in this area was that independence feeling, right? It was that, I don't want to experience what these people are experiencing. So I then chose the opposite route. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so I was kind of like one of those observer type kids.
Yeah. So I kind of echo that same independence. I think I love my grandparents, but they were too old to kind of oversee anything that I was doing. And I really enjoyed just having that autonomy. And I think that it actually gave me a lot of respect from my friends' parents and even my parents in Venezuela. I remember that they were really proud on how I was handling things, And the threat would always be that if I did anything wrong, I would be sent back to Venezuela. But I never did. Never did. I almost I did. Having all that freedom did attract me to a lot of my friends were like the kids that also had all that freedom. And I'll never forget one of my dearest friends that I'm still friends with today. And we see each other in Miami with his kids and his wife. But we went, unbeknownst to me, we were doing a beer run. And we grabbed all this beer. And I think I was like 17 or something. And then all of a sudden, like when we were about to leave the gas station, I had the beer in my hand. And my friend Chris just shoved me into the glass door. And those like... how they have to like buzz you out of convenience stores and like gas stations? Well, the guy had to buzz, so I hit the wall and it wouldn't open. And I'll never forget this Indian guy was like, I got you, you little motherfuckers. And all of a sudden, like he starts throwing like Milky Ways, Kit Kats, all this candy at us. And I'm like, hey man, let us go. He's like, okay. He's calling the cops with one hand.
Yeah.
And while he's throwing all the chocolates on the other one. And finally, it dawned on me. I'm like, oh, my God, I'm going to get arrested. I'm going to be sent back to Venezuela. I was like, I can't believe, like my life flashed through my eyes. I was like, I can't believe this is my life. And as I'm seeing this, as I'm thinking this, my friend Enrique, in slow motion, like yells, get out of the way. He found a fire extinguisher from the back of the 7-Eleven, and he just threw it into the glass. It ricocheted the whole freaking gas station, and then my friend Chris grabbed me. He was like, dip, and we all like jetted out of the gas station.
Did you get any beer?
No, no.
So this was just full on escape mode.
No, this was just survival. And then, of course, they knew what they were doing. I had no idea. So we parked 2 blocks away from the gas station, and then we went in the car. And then, of course, being 17 and like a full-on delinquent, they were like, oh, let's go back and see what happens. So we get back, and the poor Indian guy is like screaming. The fire extinguisher is like shattered. There's like 10 cop cars. And we missed it by like 2 minutes.
Wow. Got away.
I got away.
Unbelievable.
And it still haunts me a little bit.
So it's funny that you say that because
but then
sometimes we've all gone through that.
Sometimes
right?
we when we lose money on deals, I feel like, all right, God, we're even now.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying, Joe? I'm sorry.
No, it's all good because, I had similar experiences in that because, when I was 17 years old, my mom moved to Arizona and for a job. And basically it was so funny. So I was big time into surfing here in Southern California. And so
you can't see the label because they're not currently sponsoring our show.
Not yet.
Not yet. But so don't get smart.
Yeah. So I was in the process of trying to become a professional surfer.
No way.
Yeah.
I bet you had great long hair.
I had amazing hair.
Like, was it like curly? Tell me a little. Sorry, let's get back to this. But
it was wavy.
Tell me about your hair.
Yeah, so my hair was wavy and long. It had the sandy
was
beach
it like
highlights.
sun kissed?
Oh, totally. Yeah. Yeah, I had hair down to my shoulders.
Shut the really?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
that was the era. It was the 90s, man. I was grunge rock.
Oh, you were giving like Kurt Cobain vibes.
Totally. Yeah.
Nice.
And so
okay, good. Now, been meaning to ask you that for so long.
Where did the hair go?
Yeah. No, I know where it went, but what was it like? Like, what was it like? That's I've always wondered.
It was a process too.
Yeah,
you know,
I know.
I had the leave-in conditioners.
You know what? You rock it, man.
Yeah, thank you.
You're like a super sexy, handsome Lex Luthor.
Oh, I like that.
Well, when the young, like in the WB Lex Luthor, not Gene Hackman.
Somebody
Lex
actually
Luthor.
mistaken me for that guy.
I can see
at
that.
a place we were at in Mexico.
Yeah.
He's like, "Hey, were you on the WB?" I'm all, No, but I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Lex Luthor, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Give me that.
So 17 years old,
Uh-huh.
about to get, into the semi-pro surfing ring. And then my mom says, I'm moving to Arizona.
Oh, wow. Not much surfing there.
There's not much surfing. I mean, total Rick Kane. I don't know if you ever seen the movie North Shore, but like, I was like, is there a wave pool at least? Is there something that I can do like to, satisfy my need for water? She's like, we got a pool.
Wow.
But she had a choice to move
Shatter
to
your dreams.
She had a choice to move to Honolulu, Hawaii, or to Arizona, and she chose Arizona because.
Do you think that's
price-wise.
because you like got her a divorce from your father? This was like
Oh,
payback.
oh no.
Okay.
Oh no.
Okay, just
Yeah.
wondering.
My mom and my dad have a natural propensity for friction with each other. I mean, you put them in the same room together.
Well, that's how they made you.
that's
through
how
friction.
through friction. Yeah.
Yeah, got
It's
it.
just that electromagnetic energy, right?
So
And
then
so-
she chose Arizona.
She chose Arizona. I moved out there my senior year in high school. I didn't know a soul. And I told her, I'm like, if I come move to Arizona with you, you have to let me throw raging parties. Because
Oh,
that's
that
the
was
only way
that-
I'm going to be
okay.
able to make friends.
That was the deal.
That was the deal,
You're right.
right? And sure enough, we made some great friends.
Was she like cool mom? Like she would
She was
hang
the
out
total
at your
cool mom.
party.
Yeah.
She's like, hey guys, what are you doing?
No drinking for her,
Okay.
but she would make sure everybody was safe, and she would stay back in her room. And we had this big house. We had a pretty big house, much bigger than the 2-bedroom, 1-bath house that I came from in Lakewood. So it was kind of an upgrade, right?
Oh yeah, nice.
But it had this green shag carpet. It was like total 1960s. We didn't do a thing to it when we moved in, but we would have these parties, and we met some great people. And there was this band that was local in the area at the time, and they were up and coming. And I kind of attached to that, and we just started going to all of these punk rock shows and everything of that nature. And there was the lead singer, his name was Larry. Shout out to Larry Grigg. But we would do the beer run. And we would be partying until 2 or 3 in the morning, and we ran out of beer, so we had to go get the Keystone Lights, and we did this beer run. And he was well known for how fast he can run, so we was like, okay, Larry, you go get it, right? I'll be here with the engine running, right? And I had this red Ford Ranger truck that everybody popped in the back and everything like that. And so he goes and gets 2 big cases of Keystone Light. And he starts running, but somebody came out the door, and the door swung back right into him, and he just blasted right through the glass
With the
beer.
So the beer shattered.
So the beer, he falls down. The beer goes all over the place.
He went through the glass.
He went through the
And
glass.
He kept
and
running.
He kept running. And the beer.
Was he a big guy?
He was he's good,
And no
fit guy.
cut in the face.
No
nothing.
cuts, no nothing.
Like you see in a movie.
It was completely scripted, right?
Oh.
And so he gets out, but he falls on the cement,
With
and
the
beer
beer?
goes everywhere. And then we were with
That
like
must have
3
been a good
people,
show.
and so 2 of the guys just go out and start picking up all the beer. They could care less about him. They wanted the beer, and so
my
we got
God.
like maybe a 12-pack after everything was said and done. And he comes out with some scrapes on his arms and stuff like that. But we ended up with some beer.
But the clerk not running after you.
Oh yeah,
nothing?
total ran after it. But I had the car running. I was the getaway car, so I had the car running.
What about the license plate? No.
I
less.
think there was too much chaos for them.
Yeah.
And it was a very easy license plate to remember because we're American Indian, and my mother's American Indian name was Star Basket, and so she had that as a vanity plate on the truck. And so it was a very easy plate to remember, but nobody came after us.
Wow.
And sure enough, we did the same thing. We're like, well, maybe we should drive back and see what ended up happening. There was cops everywhere. The guy was trying to give a description, but he was a shaved head, blonde-haired kid. I mean, there were so many of those in Arizona at the time. You really couldn't, find anybody that didn't have that going on.
God, I love how we just admitted that we're like felons.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah. But that's what we're doing is we're inspiring people to know
be
that
like,
whatever you did in the past is in the past.
Don't let that petty theft from your high school get you down. You can still be like us.
That's right.
That's
right.
nice. Yeah.
So you went to
So wait, have
college.
you ever been arrested?
I've never been arrested.
I've never been arrested either.
Knock on
But
wood.
knock on that head of
Knock on the
yours.
noggin,
Look how
yeah.
nice it looks.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've been cuffed and stuffed before.
Oh, never. Not me.
Okay.
Not me.
All right.
Never.
Yeah.
And now that I'm not really drinking, like you're not really drinking.
Yeah.
You know, because you still once in a while think like, oh my God, what if I have that extra drink and there's like a DUI, like checkpoint. Now, like, I'm like, now that I don't really drink anymore, like, it's never going to happen.
Yeah. That happened just this last weekend. We went and celebrated the St. Patrick's Day, festivities on Saturday, and we were walking out of the bar, and somebody stopped us and said, "Hey, are you guys driving? There's a checkpoint down the road." I'm like, "I'm not drinking anymore. I'm good. We can go right through
I love
it."
how open we are about how boring we are.
Yeah.
No, that's nice. Yeah, that's
I can still
crazy,
have fun
kids.
and not drink though.
Yeah. Well, let's not indulge on like our boring lives. No, it's not boring. It's just, you kind of, my reason for, I would say cutting back has been like about a month ago. I had remember a pinched nerve.
Yes.
I was traveling so much every month and yeah, man, I just woke up on a Saturday morning. I thought I was having a heart attack because it was like this piercing pain on my left arm. And then I called my buddy Jerry, and I'm like, "You got to take me to the hospital." He takes me to the me as a grown man. I've never been to the ER,
Yeah.
and it's always been my worst nightmare, by the way.
Yeah.
So I get to the ER, and I'm like, I'm having a heart attack, and they're like, "That's great. Do you have insurance?" I throw the insurance at them. Not throw. I was polite, but
Sure.
they're so desensitized in that place
Right.
because they see everything.
Well, especially after COVID too.
Yeah. So they took they ran my vitals. They did an EKG, and they're like, "No, there's nothing wrong with your heart." And then then you see everybody walking in there with like mutilated homeless people screaming, and it was just so humbling, And anyway, the whole experience, it's been a month. I would say I'm 95%. I started working out again, but no one really figured out what it was. I went to a chiropractor, acupuncture, and I just think it was wear and tear. It could have been dehydration from all the traveling. I had just come back from Dubai, or maybe not stretching before working out, or a buildup. But it definitely made me think about my body and like how I'm treating my body. And I'm 40 plus tax age, so it's like at what point are we going to be more conscious about what we're doing?
Right.
And so it's been a bit of a whirlwind of thoughts on just being kinder to myself. That's all.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not.
I like
saying,
that. Just be kind to yourself.
Yeah, just kinder.
Right.
And I'm definitely not saying I'm not going to drink again, but
It kind of comes into the, everything in moderation.
Yeah.
Whereas you find yourself not being in moderation.
Yeah.
Right. But you had a pretty big fall in Spain, right? That was a
well, yeah. Again,
impactful thing.
I fell in Spain this summer, and it was because I was a little intoxicated running after my friend around the pool. So it also kind of triggered back to like, what if I wasn't intoxicated? Would have I fallen? So it all led back to being a little bit kinder to myself and being mindful.
Yeah.
And I think that I lost my mom last year, my dad 3 years ago, and it's like the body is such a fragile, beautiful thing that we need to look after if we want to have a healthy, long life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And personally for me, I have a family genetic disease called polycystic kidney disease, and it's a slow progressing disease. You probably look at me right now and you're like, Joe, you're completely healthy. I don't know
So
what you're
hard.
talking
You
about.
rock a bald head like no one can.
I'm telling you, it's.
I'm just
I've had to
telling you
work into
things that people are thinking.
Yeah, and so I have been doing my best to change my patterns throughout my life. I mean, when I got diagnosed with this disease at the age of 19, and when you tell a 19-year-old that you have a kidney disease, you don't know how to process it. And so my thought was, well, I had a death sentence, so I may as well help it along. And so I went for it. I mean, like I said, I just moved to Arizona, 2 years prior to that, and I was, hanging out with a band, and we were going to different venues and doing all of these concerts and shows. I ended up just becoming like their roadie and their person that would help sell merchandise and help set up the shows and help get the girls, of course. That was one of the things I was really good at. And
Allegedly. I'm sure you were.
and we were doing the rock star lifestyle, right? I mean,
You were like, fuck that kidney.
it was a complete ignorance, but it was one of those things where I just had my head down and I was just focused on that, right? And I mean, anything under the sun, I was, doing it, right? But at the end of the day, I turned 27, 28, met my wife, got married, and I
love Stacy.
Yeah, she's amazing, isn't she? Mm-hmm. I was just giving her some appreciation this morning about how.
I was like, wow, Joe, not that kind of show.
I'm so excited to be, spend my life with her. You know what I mean? It was just, I woke up grateful, and I just kind of leaned over and told her that. And so, at the age of 30, I decided that it looks like I'm not going to die as quickly as I thought, and so I better start making more health conscious decisions. And I still partied. I still, enjoyed my 30s and, did a bunch of things. But it was just recently where you actually introduced me to a whole different side of a lifestyle, which is through meditation and through spirituality and mental fitness.
Don't ever forget that, Joe.
I will
that
never
it was
forget
me.
that. I'm very, very appreciative.
When you get mad that I'm not like looking at properties and dissecting them, don't ever forget that I got you into meditation.
I have to go into my meditation state, very, very often. But I had an experience at the end of the year, and typically what I would do is I live by the 80-20 rule, right? Everybody knows what the Pareto principle is, right? You get 80% of your production out of 20% of the people. Or if you reverse it and you say 80% of the time I'm living a healthy lifestyle and 20% of the time I'm doing bad things for myself, right? And so I used that time at the end of the year, holidays and things of that nature, to kind of really have fun and go to all the Christmas parties and go to all, drink a lot.
You're one of those the weekend alcoholics.
That's right. Yeah, and it's true. It's true though, because I would literally not drink Monday through Thursday, but I was clamoring until it was Thursday here yet.
And
right?
now, do you think the meditation practice helped you to kind of I don't know about curb the behavior, but just kind of let it go or take the.
I think there was it was a combined.
So
effort.
there was an intention.
It was an intention. So I about 4.5 years ago, I really started getting into my spirituality. I'm a Christian. I believe that Jesus died for our sins and all of that stuff. But I got baptized and I started getting more into my spirituality, and then prayer and meditation is a part of that. And when you introduced me to Dr. Joe Dispenza and the way he broke it down scientifically, it really helped me enhance what I was doing already, right? And so I had a moment at the end of the year, last year, where I got too overserved, and I felt like my heart was going to jump out of my chest. I literally woke up in the middle of the night, and I thought my heart was going to jump out of my chest. And so
this was during the Christmas break?
Yep. And so I was like, that can't be good. And I've been doing a lot of stuff to self-improve. I'm on a strict diet. I'm doing all kinds of things to help prevent the progression of the disease. But I was drinking alcohol still. I was doing other things that were not conducive to that lifestyle. And so I think that through that spiritual fitness, naturally my body just said, I'm done. I don't need it anymore. And so
interesting. I've had a few friends that kind of had that same experience during this past Christmas break. So like Rami and those guys. So something was in the air, at least in my group of people, right?
Yeah.
But no, that's awesome. That's awesome that you're listening to your own body and kind of what happened to me, right?
Yeah.
With kind of taking a beat. Because there's so many things we want to do and so many people we want to help and so many stories we want to share. And if we're not being good to our bodies, then we're not going to be optimal to having all those amazing experiences.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think that that's exactly where we're supposed to be right in this particular moment. Yeah. And so I really, truly believe that that's what this show is all about. And we're going to help people grow. We're going to help people, inspire people to perform at their highest level. And so if you like what you heard today, please follow us. Please go to any of the podcast stations that you're normally used to listening to, because we're going to keep doing this. So thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks.